Hello, everyone. This is Rick, and welcome to Astral Club. Today, we're going to talk about Buddhism and astral projection. And at the end, we're going to talk about a question that I was asked that really affected me earlier this week when I was asked, when we pass over, do we have to let all our loved ones go in order not to be stuck in the lower astral? First, let's start with Buddhism and astral projection. I was a little embarrassed last week when Anon42 pointed out to me that I had forgotten to talk about Buddhism and astral projection, and he gave me some great information in a comment, as well as some links to a page that I'm going to use on a website that was largely responsible for today's episode. So Anon42, thank you very much. As far as modern Buddhism, Anon42 told me, and I did a little bit of research myself, there's a distinct aversion to talking about astral projection now. Among modern Buddhists, it's seen not as an embarrassment necessarily, but as a way to be distracted from achieving total enlightenment. So they don't really talk about it too much in today's Buddhism. But in this ancient text that we're going to review here today, it's miraculous. This thing's got to be at least over 1,000 years old. And they talk about everything that you can do when you astral project. It's amazing. I wish I had seen this many years ago when I was a child. It would have helped me to know what I could do with this gift when I was trying to experiment and trying to figure out what exactly was possible. So it's quite remarkable that they knew exactly what you could do with astral projection. So I think it's instructive that we review this, and it also lets us know that we must be on the right track, because these ancient Buddhists over 1,000 years ago said that this is what you can do, and my goodness, that's what we're doing today. So we must be on to something. So I'd like to get into that, and I hope you follow along with me. Now, this comes from the Fruits of the Ascetic Life. As I said, it's an ancient Buddhist text, and I'll leave a link to the website where I got this information, which is what Anon42, of course, left for me. So the link will be in the description. So we're going to start further down where we get into the 8 knowledges and knowledge and vision. It starts with when their mind has become immersed in samadhi, like this. And samadhi is this state of being where you're becoming purified and you're becoming more ascetic, pushing away the impurities of the physical body and this earth. Purified, bright, flawless, rid of corruptions, pliable, workable, steady, and perfectly at peace. They extend and project it towards knowledge and vision. It, they're referring to here, of course, is the astral body. So they're saying when you reach this level of spiritual attainment where you're bright and flawless, rid of corruptions, I wish I could say that I was all of these things. I could say I try, and I would think most of us listening would say that we're trying too. But luckily, we've been able to do some astral projection even before we quite achieve this perfect state. Anyway, they continue. They understand that this body of mine is physical. It's made up of the 4 primary elements produced by the mother and father, built up from rice and porridge, obviously food, liable to impermanence, to wearing away and erosion, as our physical bodies are, to breaking up and destruction. And this consciousness of mine is attached to it, tied to it. So it's this consciousness here. They're talking about how it's separate, that it is joined to it, but it is not part of it. It is separate. He's talking to this king. He says, "Then this too, great king, is the fruit of the ascetic life." And the fruit of the ascetic life is all of these abilities that you get from astral projection. So let's start when they talk a little bit more about it in mind, made, body. So these people, once they become immersed in this state of samadhi, they extend their astral body out. And from this body, they create another body, which is physical, mind-made, complete in all various parts, and not deficient in any faculty. So this is the purified body, which is the astral body. And then they do some comparisons here, trying to make sure people understand what they're talking about. Here's one example. He says, "Or suppose a person was to draw a sword out from its scabbard. They'd think, this is the sword, this is the scabbard. The sword and the scabbard are different things. The sword has been drawn out from the scabbard." Another example they give is, well, suppose a person was to draw a snake out from its slough, the skin that the snakes slough off once they grow. This is the snake, they might say, and this is the slough. The snake and the slough are different things. So the snake has been drawn out from the slough. So they're just making the point here that the astral body is inside, tied to the physical body, but like a sword being drawn out of the scabbard, it is separate, and it can be separated from it, even though when a sword is in the scabbard, one might mistake it for one piece, but actually it's two. They start talking about the many different types of psychic powers that are available when you can separate the sword from the scabbard, when you can separate the astral body from the physical. It says they wield many kinds of psychic power, multiplying themselves and becoming one again, i.e., now there's two of you, and then when you go back in again, there's only one of you. Going unimpeded through a wall. Anyone who's astral projected has gone through walls before. You remember when I told you my story when I first tried that as a child? I went through the wall, but then I became fearful and I became trapped in the wall because I think my fear allowed my vibratory phase to fall too close to the physical, where I became trapped. Of course, I was just pulled back into my body. And I eventually just started backing through walls until I learned to discard that fear. Because that way my mind wouldn't trap me inside the walls. But you can go through walls. You can go through ramparts, of course, which is just another type of wall. Or a mountain, as if flying through space. Sure, you can fly through mountains. Diving in and out of the earth as if it were water. Sure. I don't go into the earth a lot because of my claustrophobia, but anyone who wants to fly through the earth or fly to the center of the earth can do so. Walking on water as if it were earth. Yes, I have done that. Flying cross-legged through the sky like a bird. I have done the whole cross-legged thing, flying through the sky, feeling like Buddha. Although most of the time I do the whole Superman thing, where you got your arms extended. I don't know. I guess I just watched TV when I was a kid, and so that's what I do. It says touching, this is interesting, touching and stroking with the hand the sun and the moon. Now imagine for us, going to the sun and the moon in the space age is something that we think about. But those people, over 1,000 years ago, here they are saying that with astral projection, you can touch the sun, you can touch the moon. I've been on the moon. I have touched the moon. I have flown through the sun. But these people already knew that over 1,000 years ago. So these are some of the general psychic powers that are available when one begins to astral project, as related by these ancient Buddhists. Now, they get into some specialties here. One is, they said, well, when you separate yourselves, you gain clairaudience. And clairaudience is the ability to hear what you ordinarily would not be able to hear. For instance, being able to hear something that is very far away, that your human ears could never hear. And in their example here, from their lives, they talk about they hear the sounds of drums and clay drums and kettle drums and tom-toms and all of these things from very far away. And they can gain this information. So this is one of the big superpowers here, to be able to perceive this. Then there is the comprehending the minds of others, so you can read minds. Now, when you're in the astral, you can purposely read the minds of people, but you also get lots of waste noise, like a radio that's set on a middle channel somewhere. You're getting little bits of this and little bits of that, and that can become quite an annoyance. But thoughts become something that are real. They become something that you and your astral body can pick up as if you were a radio, intercepting these particular signals. And that's something that they were well aware of. The next thing here is recollection of past lives. So you can use this astral projection to recollect your past lives, to remember what you were like in the past. It says that you can recollect many kinds of past lives. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 50, 100, 1,000, 100,000 rebirths. Many eons of the world contracting, many eons of the world expanding. You get the idea. They remember, there I was named this, my clan was that, I looked like this, and that was my food. This was how I felt pleasure and pain, and this is how my life ended. So here we go, talking about recognizing past lives. Now, I have not dived very deeply into that myself, because I've looked more outwards than necessarily inwards. However, through astral projection, I was able to gain the knowledge of those pre-life memories that I related to you in one of my earlier videos, where I picked my father when he was a GI during the mid-50s in Germany, how I followed him home, how I gently suggested that he and my mother have that dance and start dating. And then I recall when my mother was pregnant with me, and when she went to work. And then, of course, I recalled rushing to the hospital to be born. All of that was possible because I asked that question during an astral projection. Ordinarily, those memories would not have been available to me. The next talent that they talk about is clairvoyance. Now, that's kind of an older term. We would think of it today as more of the ability to gain information about an object, person, location, physical event through ESP, extrasensory perception. So you're able to go places and go to according to them, see the inferior and the superior, the beautiful and the ugly, the good place and the bad place. They understand how sentient beings are reborn according to their deeds. And they go through the whole thing here. But basically what they're allowing you to do is you can see and go and bring back information and knowledge that would otherwise not be available to your physical self. And so this is the ESP ability that you are gaining here. The last bit they talk about, they call the ending of defilements. I prefer to think of it in my way, a more positive way, as seeing the big picture, no longer being obsessed with petty concerns and worries. Now look, I'm not saying that I have perfected that. I am not saying that I have gotten to the state where I never have any petty worries or concerns. But I can tell you that through astral projection, I've gained knowledge that has allowed me to see the impermanence of our world. And that as I progress into the future, for instance, how everything changes, how all the people I recognize and know are gone, how the landscape itself changes, how that forest becomes a pasture and then returns to forest again, then becomes a city, then goes back to pasture, then becomes a desert, then goes back to savanna. I mean, when you've seen these things, you've seen the impermanence. I think what it does is it can do two different things to you. It can really depress you. But I think the positive end of it is you get to put things in perspective. You get to see that the troubles that are concerning you today are small, and that tomorrow there'll be something different. And 100 years from now, no one's going to remember them. And you'd be lucky if they remember you. So what this does for me personally is it allows me to, yes, recognize that there are things that I must accomplish today, but also recognize that let's put them in perspective, okay? Let's understand that while it is important, it's not the most important thing, that there are many things going on in the world right now, and that 100 years from now, no one will remember them for the most part. In 1,000 years or 10,000 years, they certainly will. So let's do what we need to do. Let's care for others. Let's love others. But let's not get too wrapped up in our own little petty concerns and petty prejudices, petty worries. And let's try to look at the big picture about mankind and this planet and the well-being of our galaxy and the universe itself and reality. Let's have that benefit, and let's see if that perhaps makes us better humans. Now let's address that question that was posed to me earlier this week, and let's discuss it. And the question was, when we pass over, do we have to let all of our loved ones go so as not to be stuck in the lower astral? Now, this is a very deep question, perhaps even deeper than the questioner maybe immediately realized. And it really got me thinking. And I'd like to just go over a couple of stories that maybe will help at least understand what my perspective is on this. I'm reminded when I first got to know my wife, she had gone through college and art school and had been in the workforce for a number of years. And then we started dating. And she met a friend of hers that they had been thick as thieves, as I used to say in the old days. They had been great friends from the old neighborhood. And her name was Karen. And she hadn't gone to college. She had instead gotten married and started having children and went down that particular road. And when I was introduced and when Wendy got to know her again, they hadn't talked in quite a while. You could see that there was some connection there, but that things had changed, that they didn't have a lot in common any longer. She had a small child of somewhere around 4 or 5, and she was pregnant again and was going to be having another child. She had been married for a number of years, and she was worried about housing payments, worried about finding a school for her child and this next child and providing for them. And she had had some troubles with her husband, and she was going through all of these. These were now her day. These were now her daily life. My wife and I, we were in a completely different space. I'd gone to college too, and we were in our young professional phase, and we had just started really dating, and our relationship was new. We had no responsibilities other than, of course, our work, and we'd go away on the weekends and go to bed and breakfasts and travel and do whatever we wanted to do and have fun and meet with friends. And her friend was in a completely different space. And even though they had once been so close, they just didn't feel like they had a lot in common any longer. Because one person had moved off in one direction on their trip in life, and my wife had moved off in another. I'm also reminded of something that I think we all can share, and that is high school. Now, I'm sure when you were in high school, if you were like me, you probably had friends, you maybe had some enemies, people you loved, people you hated. You probably had, if you played sports, you maybe had some teammates who you really got along well with. You probably had some teachers who you hated, who were tough graders, and you had some teachers who really taught you a lot and you liked. Maybe you had some girlfriends or guys that you felt very deeply for, and it was your world. Those halls were your world. You know, walking through them for those 3 or 4 years, everything played out there. Everything that was important happened there. And your entire world rotated around that school. When it was time to graduate, you probably had the same mixed emotions that I did. Excitement that you had achieved a milestone in your life, but also an implicit sadness that you were going to leave this place that had become so important to you. The people that had become so important to you, you were going to leave as well. They were going to go off their life paths. Some would go to college. Some would go into the workforce. Some would go into the military. Some would go off in other adventures. But many of them you would never see again. So even when you were accepting your diploma and throwing your hat into the air, as is the custom in the U.S., you had that little bit of sadness lurking somewhere underneath the joy. So let's think about passing over. When you pass over, naturally you're going to feel that implicit sadness because it's going to feel like you're leaving everyone behind you. But at the same time, I think if we recognize that this is the next phase in our existence, that this is the next step in our evolution, that perhaps then it could put things into some perspective for us. If you wanted to, if someone allowed you to, for instance, stay in high school, if you said, I don't want to leave high school, these are where all my friends are, I don't want to go, how long would you really feel at home there? Think about it. Let's say they allowed you to stay past graduation and you still haunted those halls wondering about them. But now there'd be different people there. Your friends would have gone on. After a while, even the dullest person would realize that they no longer belonged there. That moving on wasn't leaving people behind. It was embracing the future. It was embracing those who you would meet in the future with future lessons. But also with the knowledge that some of those people that you had seen, you would see again. Because in this beautiful little mystery of life, we do happen to go in classes. And so even though it seems like you're leaving everyone behind, don't be surprised if some folks haven't popped up in your past and won't pop up again in your future. But are we really leaving people behind? Is it really this ultimate sorrow, like the person who asked this question seemed to be implying? I say no. I say let's embrace the positivity of this mysterious future of growing, and instead of looking at it like we're leaving someone behind, let's look upon it as if we are embracing the future. We're embracing our new selves, our growth and our growing selves. Okay, well, that is this week's episode, and I hope you found it interesting. And if you did, please hit that like button, share it with those of like minds, subscribe if you haven't already. If you have subscribed, please smash that bell button. And as I said, I'll be leaving the reference to the ancient Buddhist text, so you can click on go to that website in the description. So, as always, I will see you on the astral plane.